A big thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this week's video. If you need a website or a domain, go to squarespace.com/James for 10% off your first purchase.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to my kitchen and to a video that up until about 6 minutes ago, I didn't think I'd be making today. But I've been sat here for just under half an hour, and it has slowly dawned on me that this might be interesting/useful, or hopefully both. So I thought I'd better press record. But you can probably tell I've not thought about it all that much because there's probably quite a lot of echo in this kitchen. Echo! And I'm breaking basically the first rule of making YouTube videos, which is to make sure you don't unnecessarily date your video by, for instance, sitting in front of a Christmas tree. So my apologies if you're watching this in any month other than December, or if you don't celebrate Christmas, but at least it looks pretty. Like myself. Anyway, what am I doing? Well, last week I dropped a whole pack of German etching paper. Luckily the packet was only A4, but all of the sheets were ruined because they landed on the corner. So I had a little cry, but then I realised it wasn't the end of the world, because even if I couldn't sell these pieces of paper as prints, I could use them for my end of year review, which is something that I like to do just for myself every year. Basically, I look at some of my favourite photos from the year and I try and find commonalities among them, and I then use those commonalities to test against my assumptions. Which all sounds quite scientific. It's really not, as I'm going to explain, but someone at the door. Package for Emily. Again. So yeah, this is not a scientific process, but I have found testing my assumptions quite useful, because in my experience, my assumptions about when I want to shoot, what I want to shoot, the conditions I want to shoot in, the gear that I want to use to shoot, some of those assumptions can sort of veer from reality. And this acts as quite good proof of reality, because these are my favourite photos. Probably should have chosen a less squeaky chair. So, first thing I've noticed when looking at these photos is that I have an obsession that I wasn't aware of with orange and blue. Now both feature in quite a few of these photos. One features in pretty much all of them. And without looking at all of these photos together, I'm not sure I'd have noticed that, to be honest. And the reason I think that or noticing that is useful, as well as all the other commonalities that I'm going to talk about, is that I can then take these forward into like my scouting trips and my considerations for where I travel to next year, the kinds of things I'm looking out for, and it just means I'm more informed about what I'm looking for in my pursuit, the kinds of photos that are going to end up in this position this time next year. So yeah, that was the first thing I noticed. The relationship between orange and blue in lots of these photos is pronounced, and that is highlighted, sorry, this looks very professional, doesn't it? Ish. Highlighted by the fact that 10 of these photos, these 15 photos that I've printed out, 10 of them have blue skies. All of them were shot in the daytime, which obviously leaves 5 images that have got grey skies. But all of the grey skies are very bright and light. And if you'd have told me at the start of this year that none of my favourite 15 photos that I'd take this year would have really dark, moody skies, I'm not sure I'd have believed it. But it seems that my taste is for very bright skies. And even when they're blue, and obviously blue skies by their nature are quite bright, but I quite like to brighten them beyond what they are naturally as well. So yes, bright skies is something I'm really keen on. Now in terms of time of day, 4 of these photos were taken at sunrise, 3 were taken at sunset, which leaves 9 taken in the middle of the day somewhere. And I'm not gonna lie, that is a giant disappointment, because I think the optimum result here is to have all of your photos taken at like sunset, because that would imply that all I need to do next year is just to go out at sunset. The reality, it seems, is that I need to shoot all day to end up with the photos that I'm most happy with. So that's a bit of a kicker. However, despite the fact that I've got no clarity at all on when in the day I should be going out to take photos, because it seems I like to take photos all day, I do have some clarity on locations, because 8 of these photos are visibly taken very close to the coast. by way of the fact that they feature the sea, and all but 2 of them are taken within, I don't know, 10 miles of the coast. And what that tells me is that travelling to coastlines in future is going to be productive for me and my photography. Now, you do have to be a bit careful with this, I suppose, because it's a bit chicken and egg. I mean, I've spent a lot of time at coastlines this year, so it makes sense that lots of my favourite photos are from near the coast. If I hadn't gone near the coast, then lots of my favourite photos wouldn't be near the coast. But I have noticed that I do really like shooting at the sea, and I think it's because of the sense of space that you get. And the coast can often act as like a really nice canvas behind some quite interesting subjects. And it often looks really nice and clean, and therefore it can help simplify your shot. And so I have noticed that as much as I enjoy being by the coast, photography or not, I also really like to photograph the coast too. Another thing I've noticed, all of the light, if there is any, on the subjects in these photos is side light. So I'm not really shooting directly into the sun for any of these photos. I don't think there are any photos here where the sun is directly behind me. It looks like for the most part, the sun is, pretty much always at 90 degrees to me, maybe a bit further behind than that. But yeah, it's mostly side light, which isn't a massive surprise. That has been a preference of mine for a long time. But again, when I'm planning for locations at particular times of day, it's another thing that's good to have confirmed. Another thing I've noticed, my subjects are at least 10 meters away in all instances. And for the most part, much, much further than that. I'd say 30 meters is the next closest, something like that, which doesn't sound like a massively interesting point, but when paired with some of the metadata, I think it is. So I should really swap this chair, shouldn't I? Better. So it won't shock you to know that the most common focal lengths I've used for these photos are 40 and 50 millimeters. That's basically all I talk about on this channel. So yeah, it's hardly a surprise. A couple of anomalies. There was one shot at 33 millimeters, one shot at 28 millimeters, one shot at 400, a massive anomaly. But to be honest, as much as I think this is a nice photo, it's only really here because this was the first time I'd got a decent shot of a polar bear. The next time I get a photo of a polar bear, I'm not sure it'll make the cut. And there was another photo shot at 100 millimeters. Aside from that, everything is shot at 40 or 50 millimeters. Also, I've not checked the metadata on this, but I know for sure that all of them will have been shot between f5 and f10. Now, the reason this is relevant to me is because of gear. So I use what would be considered quite a slow lens these days. This is an f2.5 prime. Now it's 40 millimeters, which, as these photos show, is pretty good for me, particularly with a 60 megapixel sensor, because if I want to shoot at 50, I'll just crop in a bit. But the fact that my subjects are always 10 meters or 30 meters away basically means that at 40 millimeters, I can be shooting at f5, f5.6, something around there, and I can have everything right up to infinity in focus, which is perfect because this lens performs fantastically at those apertures. And this spread is basically confirmation to me that I don't need a lens that's any faster than f2.5, because as you can see, I'm shooting entirely in the day and I'm not in need of anything that can offer shallower depth of field than what I've achieved in these photos, which is not shallow at all. It's not typically something I'm looking for. ISOs, I have no idea. I use auto ISO in conjunction with minimum shutter speed, as I spoke about in the last video about my settings. So yeah, I have no idea what the ISOs are on these images. Again, they're all bright conditions, so I'd assume probably quite low, but I'm not sure. And finally, it goes without saying that all of these, with the exception of the polar bear, which I think we can probably just remove, all of these conform to my love of this human nature thing that I keep talking about, and I reckon all of these will end up in the book. And so all of these, to some extent, study the nature of the relationship between man-made things and nature. And that is probably the main reason that I like them all, really. Big fan of this one. This is probably the one that's grown on me most through the course of the year. And when you're sat in miserable December, that June light looks just to die for. So yeah, anyway, this is an exercise which can be done in 20 minutes, either by looking at prints or just photos on your phone, wherever really, which I think can really help in your planning for future trips, or as I said, just to test your assumptions and make sure that what you think about your photos and where you want to shoot them, what you want to shoot with, just to check that those things are actually right. But yeah, hopefully this was interesting, and if you end up doing this yourself, I hope you find it as useful as I have found it. Also, a huge thank you to the sponsor of this week's video, Squarespace. Now, I have a Squarespace website which features all of these images, plus many more. And to tell you the truth, I'm really quite proud of how I've compiled my portfolio. I've sort of tried to do it a little bit by colour and temperature. Not a massively scientific thing, but I think it works quite well. And as far as I'm concerned, Squarespace provides the best solutions for a home for your portfolio, because there are loads of templates to choose from depending on how you wish to set it up, and it's just as fantastic a platform for portfolios as it is for online stores, for blogs, for sending out newsletters, for answering frequently asked questions, for organising workshops. It's got everything I need to be able to run my business how I want to, and it couldn't be simpler to use. So a huge thank you to Squarespace for their continued support of this channel. If you would like to check it out, if you're looking for a way to display your images online, then just go to squarespace.com to start a free trial. And after that, if you'd like to make a purchase, just go to squarespace.com/James and you'll get 10% off that first purchase. And a big thank you to them again. And yeah, massive thank you to you for putting up with the inevitable echo. Not looking forward to editing this. Echo!